James Walker stood at the front of his classroom on Starbase 7, watching his students file out for lunch break, all except one. In the back corner, a small figure remained hunched over their desk, giving off a faint blue glow that seemed dimmer than usual. "Blue," James called out softly. "Is everything okay?" The young luminarian child looked up, their skin flickering weakly like a dying light bulb. The sight made James's heart ache. After teaching for 15 years, first on Earth and now on this space station, he had developed a sixth sense for troubled students. But Blue's case was different from anything he'd seen before. "I'm fine, Mr. Walker," Blue answered, but the declining glow of their skin told a different story. Luminarians couldn't lie effectively. Their emotions showed through their natural bioluminescence. James pulled up a chair and sat next to Blue's desk. "You know," he said, keeping his voice gentle, "when I was your age, I used to tell my teachers I was fine too, even when I wasn't." Blue's glow flickered slightly brighter for a moment, their equivalent of a small smile. "Did they believe you?" "Not for a second," James chuckled, "just like I'm not believing you now." Before Blue could respond, a soft chime echoed through the classroom. James looked up to see another luminarian standing in the doorway. Unlike Blue's fading glow, the adult luminarian shone with a steady, pearl-like radiance. Blue's mother, or as she preferred to be called, Rose. "Mr. Walker." Rose's voice carried the musical quality common to all luminarians. "May I speak with you?" James nodded, patting Blue's shoulder. "Why don't you go get some lunch? The cafeteria's serving those green noodles you liked today." After Blue left, Rose moved closer, her light casting gentle shadows around the classroom. James had always found it fascinating how luminarians could control their glow so precisely. Right now, Rose was dimming her radiance, a sign of serious discussion in her culture. "Mr. Walker, I've received your messages about Blue's struggling performance," she began, her light pulsing with concern. "I fear I haven't been entirely honest about our situation." James gestured to one of the adult-sized chairs. "Please sit, and call me James." Rose sat down, her glow shifting to a deeper blue, a sign of sadness, James had learned. "Blue's father died in a mining accident 6 months ago, before we moved to this station. What you may not know is that for luminarian children, both parents play a crucial biological role in their development." "I noticed Blue's light seems weaker than other luminarian children," James said carefully. "Yes. You see, luminarian children need both parents' bioluminescent guidance to develop properly. The father's light helps stabilize their growth patterns, while the mother's nurtures their core essence. Without both," Rose's voice trailed off, her glow dimming further. "That explains the declining test scores and withdrawal from activities." James mused, pieces clicking into place. But surely there must be some solution. Other cases like this. Rose's light shifted to a curious purple shade. "There are possibilities. Our scientists have discovered something unexpected about humans. Your neural patterns, they're surprisingly compatible with our bioluminescent frequencies." James leaned forward, intrigued. "Compatible? How?" "A human's neural activity can, with training, simulate the guidance patterns typically provided by a luminarian father." Rose's light flickered nervously. "I know this is highly unusual, but would you be willing to learn more about this? To possibly help Blue?" James sat back, stunned. Of all the parent-teacher conferences he'd had, this was definitely the most unexpected. He looked at Rose's hopeful expression, remembered Blue's dimming light, and felt something shift in his chest. "I would need to know more," he said carefully, "about what this would involve, the commitment required." Rose's glow brightened considerably. "Of course, I can arrange a meeting with our xenobiologists. They can explain everything in detail." As Rose spoke, James glanced at Blue's empty desk. He'd always believed teaching was about more than just lessons and tests. It was about helping children grow, in whatever way they needed. "Yes," he found himself saying. "Yes, I'd like to learn more." Rose's light burst into a brilliant display of joy, lighting up the whole classroom. For a moment, James could have sworn he felt a warm tingle in his own chest, like a spark answering her glow. Neither of them knew it yet, but this conversation would change not just their lives, but the understanding between their species forever. The medical wing of Starbase 7 looked nothing like the schools James was used to. Cold metal walls replaced warm classroom decorations, and the sharp smell of antiseptic filled the air. He sat in a small meeting room, watching as Dr. Tom adjusted some glowing screens. "It's quite remarkable, actually," Dr. Tom said, pointing to a display showing two brain patterns. "The human neural frequency matches luminarian patterns by almost 85%. Rose sat next to James, her glow steady but nervous. Blue was in the next room, playing with special light toys designed for luminarian children. "But how is this possible?" James asked, leaning forward to study the patterns. One was clearly human, his own brain scan from earlier that morning. The other pulsed with the familiar rhythm he'd seen in luminarian adults. "We think it has to do with how humans evolved," Dr. Tom explained, pushing his glasses up. "Your species developed incredible adaptability. Your brains can match and mirror patterns they encounter. It's why humans are so good at learning languages, music, and even alien customs." Rose's light brightened slightly. "This is why we believe you could help Blue. Your brain could learn to provide the guidance patterns Blue needs." "What exactly would I need to do?" James asked. The idea both excited and worried him. Teaching was one thing, but this seemed far more personal. Dr. Tom touched another screen, bringing up a new image. "We would start with simple training. You'd wear this." He held up what looked like a thin silver headband. "It helps you see and feel luminarian light patterns. With practice, you could learn to match them." "Like learning a new language," James suggested. "Exactly," Dr. Tom smiled. "But instead of words, you're learning light patterns. The headband translates them into something your brain can understand." Rose spoke up, her voice soft. "There's something else you should know, James. This isn't just a temporary thing. If you agree, you would need to be part of Blue's life regularly, at least until they finish growing." James sat back, taking in the weight of what she was saying. "How long would that be?" "About 8 Earth years," Rose answered, her glow dimming with worry. "I know it's a lot to ask." "And what happens if I say no?" James asked, not unkindly, but needing to understand everything. Rose's light flickered sadly. "Blue will survive, but they'll always struggle. Their light will never reach full strength. Think of it like trying to grow a plant with only half the sunlight it needs." James stood up and walked to the window. The vast darkness of space stretched out before him, dotted with stars. He thought about Blue, sitting alone in class, their light growing dimmer each day. He thought about all the reasons to say no, the time commitment, the responsibility, the way it would change his life. Then he remembered something his mother used to say: "Sometimes the best families are the ones we choose." He turned back to Rose and Dr. Tom. "Let's try the headband." Dr. Tom grinned and handed it to him. The metal felt cool against James's forehead. At first, nothing happened. Then suddenly, the room exploded with color. He could feel Rose's presence as much as see it, waves of light and emotion washing over him, like music made visible. "Oh," he gasped, steadying himself against a chair. Rose's glow pulsed with concern. "Are you all right?" "Yes, just, wow. Is this how you always see the world?" She gave the luminarian equivalent of a laugh, her light dancing with amusement. "Something like that. This is just the beginning. Wait until you learn to respond." Dr. Tom checked some readings. "This is promising. Your brain is already trying to match the patterns. With practice." Just then, the door opened, and Blue peeked in. Their dim glow suddenly brightened when they saw James wearing the headband. Through the device, James could feel their happiness like sunshine breaking through clouds. "Mr. Walker," Blue asked, "are you going to help me?" James looked at the child, then at Rose, seeing them both in a literally new light. He smiled, feeling more certain of his decision. "Yes, Blue. I'm going to try my very best to help you." Blue's glow burst into joyful patterns that the headband translated into pure happiness. For the first time, James truly understood what he was getting into. And he couldn't wait to learn more. "Focus on the feeling, not the light," Dr. Tom said for what felt like the 100th time that week. James sat in the training room, wearing his headband, trying to match the pulsing patterns on the screen in front of him. It had been 2 weeks since he agreed to help Blue, and learning to control luminarian light patterns was harder than teaching a class of 30 kids. His head hurt from concentrating, and he still couldn't get the basic patterns right. "I'm trying," James muttered, wiping sweat from his forehead. "But it's like trying to wiggle ears I don't have." Rose watched from the corner, her own light dimmed to avoid interfering with the training patterns. "Perhaps we should take a break." "No," James shook his head. "I need to get this right. Blue needs me to get this right." As if summoned by their name, Blue appeared at the door of the training room, returning from their afternoon classes. Their glow, though still weak, brightened at the sight of James. "Mr. Walker." Blue bounced into the room. "Are you learning to shine yet?" Something about the child's presence changed the feeling in James's head. The patterns he'd been struggling with suddenly seemed clearer, more natural. Without thinking, he focused on that feeling, and for the first time, his neural patterns matched the display perfectly. "He did it," Dr. Tom shouted, excited. "Look at these readings." Rose moved closer, her light pulsing with joy. "James, that's the first perfect match we've seen." "How did you do it?" Dr. Tom asked, studying the data. James looked at Blue, who had settled into a chair nearby. I think Blue helped. When they came in, it just felt right. Like the patterns made sense." Dr. Tom nodded thoughtfully. "Of course. The emotional connection. We've been so focused on the technical aspects, we forgot that luminarian guidance is based on family bonds." Over the next hour, they tried a new approach. Instead of copying abstract patterns, James practiced while interacting with Blue. They played simple games, talked about school, and even tried drawing pictures together. Each time, James found it easier to match the needed patterns. "It's like learning to smile," James explained to Rose as they watched Blue work on their homework later. "You don't think about which muscles to move. You just feel happy, and it happens." Rose's glow shifted to a warm, grateful color. Blue's light is already stronger. Look, she was right. As Blue concentrated on their work, their natural glow was noticeably brighter than it had been 2 weeks ago. Not as strong as other luminarian children yet, but definitely improving. "Can you help me with my science project, Mr. Walker?" Blue asked, looking up from their homework. "It's about earth plants." "Of course," James said, moving closer. As he did, he felt the now familiar tingle in his head as his neural patterns automatically adjusted to support Blue's light. Dr. Tom, who had been reviewing the day's data, looked up in surprise. "James, you just matched patterns without the visual guide. You're doing it naturally now." James hadn't even noticed. He'd been too focused on Blue's question about photosynthesis. "I guess it's becoming normal for me." "This is amazing progress," Dr. Tom said, showing them the readings. "At this rate, you'll be ready for full guidance sessions in another week." Blue's glow pulsed with excitement. "Does that mean Mr. Walker can come to my light-sharing class?" All the other kids bring their fathers. A moment of silence fell in the room. Light-sharing was an important luminarian tradition, where children learned to blend their light with their parents. No human had ever participated before. Rose looked uncertain. "That might be too much to ask." "No," James said firmly, surprising himself with how sure he felt. "If Blue wants me there, I'll be there." We'll figure it out together." Blue's happiness filled the room with bright, dancing lights. Through his headband, James could feel their joy, their trust, their hope. His own neural patterns responded automatically, supporting and strengthening Blue's glow. Dr. Tom smiled as he watched the readings. "Well, would you look at that? Perfect harmony." As James helped Blue with their homework, he realized something important. He wasn't just learning to match light patterns. He was learning to be a father, one glow at a time. The whispers followed James through the station's corridors. "There goes the one-of alien," he heard someone mutter. Even some of his fellow teachers gave him strange looks when they saw him wearing the silver headband. It had been a month since he started helping Blue, and while things were improving with the young luminarian, not everyone approved of their unusual arrangement. Mr. Walker called Mr. Brown, the station's head teacher, as James walked toward his classroom. "A word in my office, please." James found himself sitting in a stiff chair, facing not only Mr. Brown but also two members of the station's education board. His headband picked up nervous energy from somewhere nearby, probably Rose, waiting outside. "We're concerned about your involvement with the luminarian child," Mr. Brown said, folding his hands on his desk. "Some parents worry it might affect your teaching duties." "My teaching hasn't changed," James replied calmly. "In fact, my class's test scores have improved this quarter." "That's not the point," one board member said. "You're trying to be something you're not. Humans can't replace alien parents." Before James could answer, a commotion erupted in the hallway. He felt Blue's distressed light patterns before he heard their voice. "Take it back," Blue was shouting. "Mr. Walker is a better father than anyone." James rushed outside to find Blue facing three older children. Their light was flickering wildly, a sign of extreme upset. Rose was there too, trying to calm the situation. "Blue, what happened?" James asked, kneeling beside them. They said you're just pretending." Blue's voice wavered. "That you can't really help me because you're not luminarian." The older children backed away, looking guilty. James noticed Blue's light was actually stronger than usual, despite their distress. The neural patterns he'd been practicing were responding automatically now, helping to stabilize Blue's glow. "Come here," James said softly. He didn't care that Mr. Brown and the board members were watching. He activated his headband's full capacity, something usually reserved for their private training sessions. The corridor filled with a soft, steady light as his neural patterns synced with Blue's. It wasn't the same as luminarian light. It was something new, a blend of human steadiness and luminarian glow. "See that?" he asked Blue, pointing to where their energies merge. "That's real. Different doesn't mean fake." Rose stepped forward, her own light joining theirs. "James is right. Look how strong your light is now, Blue. Stronger than it's been in months." Mr. Brown cleared his throat. "Mr. Walker, about our discussion." With all due respect, James stood up, keeping his connection with Blue steady. "Maybe instead of worrying about what's traditional, we should focus on what works. Blue's grades are up. Their light is stronger. Isn't that what matters?" One of the board members stepped closer, studying the light pattern with genuine interest. "I've never seen anything quite like this. How are you maintaining such a stable connection?" "Because he cares," Blue said simply. "That's what Dad always said was most important about light sharing, caring about each other." The word Dad hung in the air. Blue had never called James that before. Rose's light pulsed with surprise and something that felt like joy. Mr. Brown looked at the board members, then at the still glowing trio. Finally, he sighed. "Perhaps we've been too hasty in our judgment. Mr. Walker, you may continue your arrangement as long as it doesn't interfere with your teaching duties." "Thank you," James said. He felt Blue's light pulse with happiness and had to smile. "Though I should mention, I'd like to take next Thursday afternoon off. There's a light-sharing class I promised to attend." Later, as they walked home together, Blue couldn't stop talking about how they'd stood up to the bullies. Rose's light shimmered with quiet pride. "You know," she said to James, "when I first asked for your help, I never imagined." "Neither did I," James admitted. "But sometimes the best things in life are the ones we don't see coming." Blue walked between them, their glow stronger and steadier than ever, creating a bridge between human and luminarian light. Maybe they couldn't change everyone's mind, but for now, this was enough. This strange, wonderful family they were becoming, one light pattern at a time. The emergency alarm in James's quarters blared at 3 a.m. Rose's panicked voice came through the station's comm system. "James, it's Blue. Something's wrong." He was running down the corridors before fully waking up, headband already in place. When he reached their quarters, he found Rose hovering over Blue's bed. The child's normally bright glow had faded to almost nothing. "What happened?" James asked, rushing to Blue's side. They woke up screaming. Rose's light flickered with fear. "Their pattern is all wrong. It's the growth crisis." James had read about this. All luminarian children went through a dangerous phase where their light could fade completely if not properly supported. Usually, both parents would combine their light to help the child through it. "We need a proper luminarian father," a stern voice declared. Elder Light, the station's senior luminarian healer, stood in the doorway. 2 more traditional healers flanked him. "This is too delicate for human interference." "But James has been helping Blue for months," Rose protested. "Playing at guidance during normal times is one thing," Elder Light said. "This is life and death. Step aside, human." Blue whimpered, their light flickering weaker. James felt their distress through his headband. They were slipping away. "There's no time to argue," James said. "Blue needs help now." The healers moved forward, their lights combining in traditional patterns. But when they tried to connect with Blue's fading light, something strange happened. Blue's glow dimmed even more. "They're rejecting the connection," one healer said, surprised. "Because they're used to James's patterns now," Rose realized. "Their light has adapted to his guidance." Elder Light's glow pulsed with frustration. "This is why mixing species is dangerous. Now the child can't even accept proper help." Blue's readings on the medical monitor started dropping. Rose's light froze in terror. "Move," James said firmly, pushing past the healers. He sat on Blue's bed and took their small hand. "I'm here, Blue. Remember how we practice." He closed his eyes, focusing everything he'd learned over the past months. This wasn't about copying patterns anymore. This was about the connection they'd built, the trust they shared. "This is foolish," Elder Light began, but stopped when he saw what was happening. James's neural patterns, translated through the headband, were creating something new. It wasn't the traditional luminarian guidance. It was different, a hybrid of human steadiness and luminarian light. Blue's dim glow began to pulse in response. "Rose," James called, holding out his other hand. "Complete the circuit." Like in practice. Rose moved forward instantly, her light joining theirs. The room filled with a glow unlike anything the healers had ever seen. Human neural energy merged with luminarian light, creating patterns that shouldn't have been possible. "Their readings are stabilizing," Dr. Tom announced, rushing in with his medical equipment. "Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." For hours, James and Rose maintained their connection while Blue fought through the crisis. The healers watched in amazement as Blue's light slowly strengthened, taking on a slightly different quality. A blend of their mother's pure luminarian glow and the unique patterns they'd developed with James. Finally, as the station's day cycle began, Blue opened their eyes. Their light was steady and strong, with a new depth to it. "Dad?" they whispered, looking at James. "You stayed." "Of course I did." James smiled, exhausted but happy. "That's what fathers do." Elder Light stepped forward, his glow showing clear surprise. "In all my years, I've never seen anything like this. The child's light. It's different, but strong. Possibly stronger than traditional patterns. Because it's both, Rose said proudly, "Human and Luminarian, just like our family." Dr. Tom was practically bouncing with excitement as he reviewed the readings. "Do you realize what this means? We've discovered a whole new way to help Luminarian children who've lost a parent." But James wasn't listening to the scientific implications. He was watching Blue's strong, steady glow, feeling their happiness through his headband. Sometimes the best solutions weren't the traditional ones. Sometimes they were the ones you created together, with love and trust. "Can we have breakfast?" Blue asked, sitting up. "I'm hungry." James and Rose laughed, their lights dancing together in shared joy. They had faced the crisis and come out stronger. Now they were truly a family, glowing with a light all their own. News spread quickly on Starbase 7. 3 weeks after Blue's crisis, the medical bay was crowded with visitors. Luminarian parents, scientists, and officials had come from 3 different star systems to see the human who could help Luminarian children. James stood awkwardly in Dr. Tom's lab, watching Blue show off their new abilities to an amazed group of observers. The child's light now had a unique pattern, a perfect blend of Luminarian glow and human neural energy. "Do it again, Blue," called one of the young Luminarian children who had come with their single parent. Blue happily demonstrated how they could switch between pure Luminarian light and the hybrid patterns they had developed with James. "It's remarkable," said Dr. Tom, showing his data to the gathered scientists. "The human-Luminarian connection actually created new pathways. Blue can do things neither species could do alone." Rose stood beside James, her light glowing with pride. "Show them the learning pattern," she encouraged Blue. Blue nodded and focused. Their light shifted into a teaching pattern, something usually only adult Luminarians could do. 3 younger Luminarian children watched in wonder as Blue helped them understand basic light patterns. "This is impossible," one Luminarian scientist muttered, checking his instruments. "A child their age shouldn't be able to teach patterns." "That's the human influence," Dr. Tom explained excitedly. "James's neural patterns somehow unlock this ability. We think it's because human brains are so adaptable." A tired-looking Luminarian mother stepped forward, holding the hand of a dimly glowing child. "Can you help my daughter too? Her father was lost in the same mining accident as Blue's." James felt the weight of hope in her voice. He looked at Blue, now happily playing with the other children, their light strong and steady. Then he looked at the dim child, seeing the same sadness he'd first noticed in Blue. "We can try," he said softly, "but I think we'll need more help than just me." He turned to the gathered humans in the room, teachers, doctors, and station staff who had been watching the demonstrations. "Any of you could potentially do this. The ability isn't unique to me. It's just about being willing to learn and care." Dr. Tom nodded enthusiastically. "James is right. Our tests show that most humans have the basic neural compatibility. With training." "I'll help," said Lisa, another teacher from James's school. She stepped forward, looking at the dim child with determination. "I've seen how much Blue has improved. If I can help another child like that, I want to try." Over the next few hours, more humans volunteered. Dr. Tom began organizing training schedules, while Rose and Blue demonstrated the basics of light pattern matching to the interested humans. James watched as Blue confidently explained to Lisa how the connection felt. "You have to care first," Blue was saying. "The patterns don't work if you don't care." A member of the Luminarian High Council, who had arrived that morning, approached James. "We were wrong to doubt this partnership," he admitted. "Your success with Blue opens up new possibilities for both our peoples." "It's not just about helping children who've lost parents," James replied, watching Blue teach. "Look at what we can learn from each other. Blue can do things neither humans nor Luminarians thought possible." Rose joined them, her light dancing with happiness. "The station authorities have approved our request. We're opening a human Luminarian learning center. James will help train other humans who want to help, and I'll teach them about our culture and biology." The council members' light showed approval. "And Blue, I'm going to help teach too, Blue called out, overhearing them. Their light pulsed with excitement. Dad says I'm proof that different doesn't mean wrong. It can mean better. James felt his chest tighten with pride at being called Dad in front of everyone. Through his headband, he could feel Blue's joy and confidence, so different from the dim, sad child he'd first met in his classroom. As he watched Blue continue teaching the other children, James realized they had done more than just solve one child's problem. They had opened a door between two species, showing that differences could be strengths when mixed with understanding and love. The room glowed with hope, human and luminarian light mixing together, creating patterns that would guide both species into a brighter future. 1 year had passed since Blue's crisis, and Starbase 7 looked very different now. The newly built Human Luminarian Learning Center took up an entire section of the station, its walls designed to capture and enhance the unique light patterns of its students. James walked through the main hall, smiling at the sight before him. In every classroom, human teachers worked alongside luminarian parents, their neural headbands glowing as they helped children develop their light patterns. What had started with one human teacher and one luminarian child had grown into something amazing. Dad, come quick. Blue's excited voice called from one of the advanced practice rooms. Mark just got his first hybrid pattern. James hurried over to find Blue working with a young human boy and his luminarian student. Blue's light pulsed with teacher's pride, a sight that still amazed everyone who remembered they were just a child themselves. Show him, Mark, Blue encouraged. The human boy, wearing a training headband, concentrated hard. Slowly, his neural patterns merged with his luminarian student's light, creating a gentle glow that filled the room. Well done, James said, feeling proud of both Blue and Mark. How did you teach him? I told him what you told me, Blue explained, their light dancing with happiness. That he had to feel it in his heart first, then his head would follow. Rose appeared in the doorway, her light shimmering with amusement. Are you quoting your father again, Blue? It works, doesn't it? Blue grinned, their light patterns shifting to match both Rose's and James' in a way that still fascinated scientists. The Learning Center had become famous across several star systems. Every week, new families arrived, humans wanting to help, luminarian children needing support, and scientists eager to study the remarkable results of their cooperation. The council representatives are here, Rose reminded James. They want to see Blue's class. James nodded. Today was important. The Luminarian High Council was voting on making human-luminarian partnerships an official part of their culture. Blue's success had opened many eyes, but some traditionalists still needed convincing. They walked to Blue's classroom, where 12 students waited, a mix of humans and luminarians, all learning to blend their abilities. Blue stood at the front, their light strong and confident. Today, Blue announced to the council members, we're going to show you something new, something we invented just last week. The students arranged themselves in a circle. The human children activated their headbands, while the luminarian children prepared their light patterns. Blue walked around the circle, adjusting positions slightly. Ready? Blue asked. Remember, feel it first. What happened next made even the oldest council member gasp. The children's lights and neural patterns combined into a complex dance of energy, creating shapes and patterns in the air that neither species could make alone. It was beautiful, like a light symphony. Impossible, one council member whispered. These patterns, they're more advanced than our ancient light dances. Because they're not just luminarian patterns, James explained proudly. They're something new. When we stop trying to keep things separate and let them blend naturally, amazing things happen. Blue guided the children through the end of their display. As the lights faded, the room burst into applause. Even the doubtful council members were nodding with approval. Later that evening, James, Rose, and Blue sat in their favorite spot, the station's observation deck. The stars stretched out before them, their light mixing with the family's own gentle glow. The council approved everything. Rose said happily. The Learning Center is now official. They're even planning to build more on other stations. Does this mean more families will be like ours? Blue asked, their light shifting between patterns contentedly. James smiled, adjusting his headband to better share the moment with them. Every family is different, Blue. That's what makes them special. But ours is the best, Blue declared, their light wrapping around both parents in a warm embrace. James felt Rose's joy mixing with his own through their shared connection. He thought about that first day in his classroom, when he'd noticed a dim light in the corner. He could never have imagined where that moment would lead. As they sat together, their combined light reached out toward the stars. 3 different patterns merged into one perfect glow. They had done more than help one child. They had shown 2 species how to build bridges of light between their differences. And that light would guide others forward, one family at a time.